Hello and welcome to Sincerely Speaking. I am Marcia Amaro, and I cannot even begin to tell you how excited I am about our conversation today. I am so thrilled to introduce you to Joshua Rutherford. He is a true creative soul, and I just can't wait to dive into this conversation about creativity, about being who you are meant to be, about just diving into your passions and all those wonderful things that I'm sure our conversation will lead into. But Josh, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Marcy. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let us get started right at the beginning. How did you get started in your line of work, and what exactly is it that you do?
Oh, goodness. Well, that's a great question. My path has been very nonlinear, to say the least. I started, to go way, way back, I've always wanted to be creative and I've always had a passion for the written word. So when in high school and college, I had just, the biggest dreams of initially being a filmmaker. Specifically a screenwriter. And that was my passion. That's what I studied and that's what I aimed for. And certainly right out of college, I really dove head into screenwriting. But then fast forward a few years to the Great Recession, and that kind of dried up any opportunities, which weren't many, but any opportunities I had on that front. I still continue to write screenplays, but then I felt myself just wanting more, wanting to get my voice really out there. And that's when I transitioned to novels and short stories, which is what I currently do now. Now, that is very much a passion of mine. That's something I guess you could label it as a side gig, but certainly a passion. During the day, I work in human resources. So I help people with their benefits and other things of that nature. So a few paths in my journey that are one of many or some of many.
That's awesome. See, I think that one of the reasons we connected so quickly is because I consider myself a multi-passionate person, and my audience tends to be multi-passionate, right? Now, one of the things that I would love for you to dive a little bit deeper into is this notion of you can't really live your passion, right? Like I know for myself as a multi-passionate person, I kept hearing, no, you need something more secure. You need something more traditional. You need something more whatever, right? But the underlying message was you can make a living out of your passion. Has that been your experience as well? Like people try to dissuade you from following your passion?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be completely transparent, my family comes from a blue collar background, so very much working class, whether that's the acceptable term today or not. But yeah, and then kind of growing up, I was very much a type A personality. So while I excelled in school, the expectation is that I would settle into something a little bit more stable. For instance, like three of my four best friends are computer engineers. So oftentimes the refrain I hear nowadays, oh, why didn't you do that or this or something else? And honestly, while I haven't had a tremendous amount of financial success in either film or video or as a novelist, it is still something that I remain very passionate about. Having started this journey, now I'm dating myself, a few decades ago in high school and college, regardless of the financial rewards that have or have not come, it's just something that has always been a focal point in my life.
No, that's amazing. See, because that's the other part of it, right? Like, just a little bit of background so that you can see how much we connect. I started actually my college career as a pre-med student because I was supposed to be a doctor, right? That's not the way it ended up going at all. But here's the thing: there's more than one way to be rewarded, right? And I believe that when we look at multi-passionate people like ourselves, we can get rewarded in different ways for each of our different passions, right? Like I'm sure you and I've heard this expression and I've used it myself a lot, is your 9 to 5 or your day job funds your passion, right? So what you do to earn money funds your passion, which rewards another part of your being. Do you find that to be the case for you?
Oh, absolutely. Especially now. I mean, it took me a while to find a 9 to 5 that was really aligned with my values. And that's how I got into human resources and the mode of helping people and helping companies help their employees. And definitely having to work whatever jobs were available or, those that were aligned my later on aligned with my values helped to really provide me with a sense of, I won't say stability, but kind of an alternate sense of purpose
Mhm.
that fed into my passion, into my art. And, certainly we all have to eat. I know there's kind of the idea of a starving artist and like we have to really like suffer for our art and for our passions. And while that may be true for some, for so many of us, we have to go on living. And that means taking care of ourselves so that we can then put something, great, something passionate into the world.
Absolutely. I love that you use the expression an alternate sense of purpose. See, I am a big advocate in the fact that we don't have one standard singular purpose, right? We have different purposes depending on what hat we have on at the time. But I also love that you mentioned that they need to align with your values, right? And I think that that's the filter right there. As long as what you're doing fits into your values and somehow helps feed that ultimate vision, then it's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Now, I want to circle back to something that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and it was about releasing your voice or sharing your voice, something along the lines of finding and utilizing your voice. How important and how valuable was it for you to finally identify what your voice gets to sound like and share that with the world?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, that was again, like so many of my experiences, very nonlinear. Um, I would say when my voice as an artist really started taking off was about the time when I was transitioning from screenwriting.
Mm.
Because at the time, when you write a screenplay, going back to that, you're writing it really for an audience of one initially, whether it be a producer that's looking at it or a director or maybe an agent or someone at a production company. And oftentimes that's where it stops, because many screenplays don't see the light of day or don't get produced and everything. And really, I felt that my writing was becoming a little formulaic and kind of feeling more to a mainstream, and my voice was getting lost somewhere in there. Um, as I was considering my next move in writing, one of the things I did was join Toastmasters to help really build my confidence as well as to really develop my speaking voice. And it just so happens that path, along with transitioning from screenwriting to novel writing and short stories, those two just continued forward for me. And they really fed off each other. I would give speeches about my creative projects, and then the speeches I gave and the skills that I learned in Toastmasters then fed into my writing and really improved my dialogue too. So that's really when my voice started taking off, and I really came into my own as a writer.
I love that. And what I particularly love about it is that it exemplifies the fact that you only identify your true voice as you share it, right? So you started sharing it first, and the more you shared it in different platforms and in different formats, the more it became its own, the more it took form and life, right? So I absolutely love that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Now, we've talked in a couple of different ways and a couple of different times about basically life throwing you curveballs and the direction not being linear and everything not being exactly necessarily as you planned. For anybody who's listening, and I always like to find a way to make this practical and actionable, right? So for anybody who's listening, who's thinking, I want to get from A to B, but I don't know how to handle the curveballs or I don't know how to identify the right path. What suggestions would you give to get started?
Yeah. My first suggestion would be don't be so committed to your plan that it derails from your objectives, from your goals. Um, yeah, a few years back, I read this article about from this entrepreneur who said the key to his success was to never have a plan B. And that sticks with me because one, I disagree with that, and two, it really kind of conflates the notion that your plan is the same as your goals and objectives.
Mhm.
And really, your plan is just the steps you take, what you outline in order to get to your goal. And certainly, I've had dozens or hundreds of plans at this point in my life, which I've had to really refine and pivot. And I feel that too often in writing, especially, so many would-be writers get stuck on their plan. And if they hit a roadblock because they can't get past it because it isn't aligned with what they planned out, they just give up and stop.
Hmm.
And this the key to my success as a writer, at least, and being a prolific writer, is being able to really stop, assess the situation, and then pivot or change accordingly so that I don't get hung up on my obstacle and I can proceed forward to my goals and objectives.
Got it. See, I love that. One of the things that I teach is that you commit to the destination, not the route. And that sounds a lot like what you're saying, right? So you're committed to being an author, you're committed to being in this creative space. How you get there, it doesn't matter as long as you get there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So the commitment and the not accepting other alternatives, in my opinion, is to the destination. So this is where I'm going. This is what my vision is. This is the end goal. But the strategy, I can try a million different ones.
And honestly, I probably tried a million different ones, but at this point, I lost count a while ago. So by now, it's probably up there.
How do you not give up?
I would say probably, and this is me talking about my own journey,
Of course.
why I haven't given up is while I've had a lot of roadblocks and obstacles and a lot of things have tripped me up, that passion has always remained.
Mm.
And the more I do it, the more I find inspiration to fuel that passion. For instance, starting way, way long ago, I had aspirations of being, I guess the term is like a man of the world, a writer, like a Hemingway, like being able to travel and write from anywhere, whether it be as a screenwriter or as a novelist. Fast forward to now. And one of the things that has grounded me more as a writer and certainly inspires me more is being a father, of being a parent, of having two sons, and one day writing something, whether that's already been written or projects I continue to write now, that long after I'm gone, something my sons, my grandchildren, or great grandchildren can appreciate, can enjoy. So that is something that didn't exist for me, years and years ago, but now exists for me now. And I think having those additive values, those
Mhm.
additive points of inspiration really keeps me going as a writer, but also I believe is an impetus for so many other artists and creatives.
Awesome. Where does the inspiration for your content come from?
For my content, that comes from so many sources. I would say probably at present, and this really feeds not only into my fictional work, but also my nonfiction work, which I'm starting to dabble into, is my background. I grew up multiracial. I grew up in a multicultural environment. And honestly, growing up, those things weren't really discussed. So
Mhm.
there's always or I should say parts of me that were either under the surface or were never really addressed. For instance, I'm part Filipino, part white, part Mexican. I grew up in the Southwest in San Diego, and a lot of my family, though, just identified as Mexican, because of different marriages and everything, and different family dynamics. So growing up so close to the Mexican border, with many of my family being Mexican, a lot of what was, I won't say push, but influenced me was Mexican culture. But there are other parts of my culture, of my identity, my heritage that I just didn't know about, so I couldn't identify with. And it wasn't until as a young adult and I started really this path of self-discovery and this journey to really evolve my sense of identity, if you will, that I really felt additional voices and kind of this context that I never knew existed coming up and welling up within me. So a lot of that self-discovery, that coming of age, and that multiplicity of not only voice, but of purpose, of identity, really makes its way into my writing.
That's awesome. How do you define identity? I'm just curious.
Oh, for me, that's a moving target. I'll admit. My identity has certainly morphed and uh, developed over the years. I would say that as of now, my identity definitely involves a strong sense of purpose. As I mentioned, I'm a parent, I'm a dad. So a lot of not only my responsibilities, but really my privileges, they really have come into my life and helped build an identity I can be proud of. It also involves my values, whether those are values that come from my heritage, my religion, my faith, my spirituality, what I not only treasure, but also what I seek out. That has come to the forefront of my identity and is something that I can now appreciate. Being a husband, being a father, being a family man.
That's awesome. Now, I'm curious, right? Like all these questions I'm asking is out of curiosity because of your journey and because of the things that you experience and you do. When it comes to the creative side of Josh, right? Are you more interested in volume or are you more interested in refinement?
Ooh. Now, I would say I'm more interested in refinement. I think with a lot of the courses and workshops that I've taken, the emphasis, especially for new writers, is to just get your work out there, just to start producing, start getting into the flow, into the discipline of writing, and really kind of churning out your work. Now, being the age I am, being at the point in my life I am, that I've self-published a few books and I look back at my writing, I would say my maturity, that refinement that comes with maturity, has taken center stage. One of the things that really has inspired my refinement is I have a writer friend of mine who is like myself in that he's put out a few and written a few manuscripts. And we're both at the same point in our writer's journey, and that we're looking to really up our game. We're kind of wanting to be taken more seriously in our craft, but we also hold ourselves accountable to really improving and growing as writers. And I think that refinement, that's necessary because it leads to a higher level that you haven't been to before.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for anybody starting out, and this isn't just necessarily writing, right? I think that this applies to any creative pursuit. But for anybody starting out, would you advise just focus on production, getting the volume out at first? Do you think that that's helpful?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're just starting. I think referring back to my own experience, because I think it's so relevant to other new writers, that the starting, that anxiety, the anticipation that comes with starting really inhibited me as a writer. And honestly, whether you're I'm using these terms very generically, but whether you're a good or a bad writer, that's going to come out no matter what. So why not just get started? It's like it's almost like when you're starting like a gym routine or you're running. It's like whether you're fast or slow, delaying that or that procrastination isn't necessarily going to change that particular outcome. So why not just jump right in, find out who you are, and then you can refine from there.
Absolutely. I have a mentor that says embrace the suck. meaning
Yeah,
meaning that
exactly.
everybody just sucks at first. So
Yeah,
embrace it, own it, and then the more you do, the more you identify the things that you can tweak and fix so that you get better, right? So that's just
yeah.
amazing. I was just curious because a lot of people, like I know for me, for instance, I'm a recovering people pleaser and a recovering perfectionist, right? So those two things combined made it so hard for me to put any kind of output out at first because I wanted everybody to like it and I wanted it to be perfect. But that could have held me in paralysis forever. Like I would still be waiting for something that pleases everybody and that is perfect. So yeah, that was just my curiosity. So again, For those people who have put their creative endeavors or their creative pursuits and dreams on hold, what would you advise as a first step?
Be kind to yourself and start small. And by starting small, I mean, you can't, that doesn't mean you can't have big dreams. But by starting small, just that first step, those baby steps, not to sound too cliche, they really do make a difference, I believe, to the beginning of your journey, because you can always point back to that moment and say, I was courageous enough, I was brave enough to start then.
Mm-hmm.
And you're never going to be completely ready, of course. Like anything else, those first steps, they're a reason why they're daunting, because there's no guarantee, there's no sure thing involved with the start, the beginning of anything that involves really putting yourself out there, really putting a voice out there, and honestly creating something completely new, or creating just anything. So not having that certainty, I get it. It's very daunting, it's very intimidating, but that first step is just so rewarding. It's really worth embracing that risk and really just going for it.
That's awesome. What's it like for you, or what was it like for you the first time you published something, knowing that now it got to stand on its own, right? But you're still so identified with it. What was that experience like for you?
Honestly, it was just overwhelmingly personal. It was just like the most personal thing. It's like a lot of artists compare it to like having a child or something like that, but it's really making yourself so vulnerable, because good or bad, that's a part of you that a lot of people, I get it, have never seen before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to share, when you publish nowadays, it's out there online on Amazon and e-retailers. So you don't know these people that are seeing it for the first time. And I realize that, especially today with like trolls and social media and everything, I mean, there's like no filters nowadays to read responses. So yeah, it's a lot to take in. And I think kind of having a little bit of distance and a little bit of also maturity to make that response that you see less personal, especially if it's very biting and intentionally cruel. And honestly, unfortunately, that's kind of the reality of being a writer. But then kind of taking everything in stride and realizing no matter the comments and remarks, you still have a way forward.
Yeah. Have you been able to separate yourself from your product, meaning like separate what they say about your writing from being a direct attack on you?
In regards to that, I'm definitely a work in progress. I've gotten better at it. I'll admit to that much, but it still stings. I'll just admit to it. I mean, all the effort that goes into creating a book. I mean, not only from writing it, but going back to editing it and just polishing it, and then everything that comes after, like promoting and everything, and certainly putting it out there. I mean, it's a lot of work not to take personally, and I think in terms of launching a book, what has helped me is realizing that this is one step on a very long journey. And I keep reminding myself of that, especially with the book series I'm working on now, because when I first started out, I was all really focused about the standalone books. But because my work now is tied as part of a book series, and honestly, even my nonfiction writing, I mean, because it's part of a blog, and there's kind of a trail of work now to follow, and also um, uh, coming on later on, that's something that really kind of propels me forward and keeps me going.
Absolutely. It's looking at that end goal that you're working towards, right? And I know it's hard to separate yourself, and it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you're doing something meaningful, there's going to be people that disagree, that don't like you, or that hate on you just because they're haters. So that's just part of it. So tell us more about your work. Tell us more about that series. It's a fiction series, right? What's it
Correct.
about? What's it called? Tell us more about it.
Yeah. Well, my current project is the 4 Point Chronicles. It's a 6 book series, and it focuses on identical quadruplets, 4 brothers, and they live in this fantasy kingdom where their identity is hidden from the rest of the kingdom, and they have to present themselves as one monarch. So initially one prince, and then that prince later gets coronated and becomes a king. So these four brothers are living a double life. There's the life they have as quadruplets amongst each other and the secret society that supports them. And then there's their public life, which is, the one king, the one monarch that they play, and they have to play that part well. And in doing so, they have to serve their kingdoms. So very much my work ties into, as I mentioned earlier, my personal life impacts all my work. But in terms of this fantasy series, growing up multiracial and having experience like imposter syndrome and then also code switching, that those themes really are integrated into my work as I tell this fantasy series about these four brothers, which starts with them coming of age. And then they later get married. They do have a child, not to give away too much. And then they live their life as kings should. And then battles and wars and other things happen that you would expect in a fantasy series, but with that undertone of really kind of being influenced by my multiracial heritage as well as my personal experiences.
Oh, that sounds fascinating. So anybody who wants to connect with you, who wants to find your work and support it, how can they get in touch with you, Josh?
Yeah, I can be found on Amazon. So my work is self-published, it's out there. There's also a few other platforms like Booksy and Panana where I put my work out there for free. And then, of course, I can always be connected with through my website, joshuakrutherford.com. If you sign up there, you'll receive a free e-gift. And you can also follow my blogs through that website as well as through Medium.
Sounds awesome. Well, any final thoughts, any final words that you would like to leave anybody listening to it?
I know we've touched upon a lot, both for writers and for readers. And for the writers out there, you definitely have support, you have community. I would like to part by saying, like, writing can seem like such a journey of solitude. And as I reflect on my own journey as a writer, I want to acknowledge all those who encouraged and supported me. So to the writing community, that support is out there. It may not feel apparent now, but further on down the line, it does manifest itself in various ways. And to the readers out there, support your writer, especially your local writer. A kind comment or just a purchase or even a free download, and then maybe some very kind but supportive feedback. You have no idea how much that goes, how much that encourages us as writers. So to the reading community, keep on reading.
Absolutely. Books cannot die, guys. They cannot die. There's such a wealth in books. So Josh, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your knowledge and your smile with us. It was awesome having this conversation with you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Marcy. It was a pleasure being here.
And for everybody watching or listening, go connect with Josh, check out his work. You will love it. And I will see you next week on Sincerely Speaking. Thank you.